In this video, I'm going to show you how I took the popular physical ray hand train build that everybody told me caps out at around 10 to 15 billion DPS and turned it into a 500 billion DPS monster. This is actually my very first season playing the game, and so this character is something that you don't need to unlock. As the first character you have is the Ray Hand 1, and this is a build that's pretty easy to level up. I just followed Milky's leveling guide for the character that's found on maxroll.com, which I'll link in the description down below. And after getting a big drop while farming and getting ourselves an eternity, I really wanted to take the build kind of to the next level and beyond what most people's expectations were. And we were looking around at what people were doing in different realms, especially on the China realm. And a lot of people were using the exquisite box to trigger rain of arrows. And really, this just wasn't very appealing to me. I wanted to make sure to continue to use eternity because it's absolutely a blast to level with. It's like Headhunter, but as an amulet. And we were trying to figure some stuff out, and with the help of this guy Kithik, we managed to work a build together that is just incredible. We're just blasting through 8-4s with ease. I'm gone and killed the event boss, the pirate guy, and that was even before I got some more upgrades after that, and it's just been a total blast to play. Now in this video, I'm not necessarily going to cover all of the ins and outs of the build. Instead, I'm going to leave a lot of that to the max roll builder down below. I'm going to include 3 different links for you. Number 1, what my current character's gear looks like today. Number 2, what my character looked like right before I converted over to the conversion version of the build. And number 3, a builder was kind of the goals for me for the first day or 2 of the season. Kind of just getting started with the build. The build is all about one particular thing, and that is a special effect that Rayhan 1 gets, which is Burst. At level 13, you get this first trait here that makes it so that attacks trigger Burst once on hit while Berserk is active, which is kind of like a rage mechanic. This is a cooldown of 0.3 seconds. At 62, you're going to increase the amount of damage it deals by quite a bit, and you're also at 80 going to get the ability to trigger this just from crits alone, and this will also trigger 100% of the time from crits while your Berserk is active. So this cooldown here can be reduced by cooldown reduction, and so that kind of acts like the attack speed for this particular skill, and we are going to try to be attacking all of the time, critting all of the time, and just proccing off as many bursts as possible. And the reason why burst is so powerful is because it deals 550% of your weapon damage to enemies within 3 meters. And this is tagged as an attack, melee, physical, triggered an area, and it is just incredibly powerful. Note that damage, like added physical damage to your gear, will increase by 550%, whereas anything that's like, hey, physical damage to attacks is not going to be affected by this multiplier. So actual weapon damage is incredibly important in this build. Also, despite the fact that it has the triggered tag here, things that affect triggered skills cooldown don't seem to have any effect on it. However, cooldown reduction in general is a great stat. And so we're looking for weapon damage, attack speed, crit chance, and cooldown. All of these things are kind of the big part of the build. However, that's kind of like just what the basic physical ray hand does. What we're going to do is we're going to take it even farther. And the way that we're going to take it even farther is with an immense amount of aura stacking and damage conversion. Right off the bat, we're going to be doing a physical hit, and we're going to be converting that 100% to lightning through a glove modifier and a mod on one of our slates. And then we're going to be converting that to fire and then to erosion. And so we're using auras that increase our physical damage and give us attack speed. We're going to be using electric conversion here, which gives us physical damage added as lightning, and then more lightning damage here. We're going to be getting more damage to life, more erosion damage, more erosion penetration. We're using charged flames for even more fire damage. We're getting more physical damage here. We're getting more critical strike rating and critical strike damage here as well. And all of this is really just going to add up in a really big way to give us a lot of power. Now, on top of that, converting is going to give us the opportunity to take advantage of a powerful ring, Kaleidoscope. And what this does here is it gives you a buff every 4 seconds that rotates, and it's either going to give you increased erosion damage, elemental damage, or physical damage. Corroding this takes it from 35% to 45%, but since we're doing physical converted to elemental converted into erosion, we get the benefit of this buff regardless of which one it is all of the time. So each of these rings gives us 45% more damage, which is incredibly nice. Now, before we get into all of the other gear, I want to talk a little bit about how we're converting. Like I mentioned, we're doing physical to lightning on our glove and on a slate, but then we're going to use candles to be a little bit tricky. And so candles, when they have a tier 0 modifier, they will also have a negative modifier that goes along with the positive. So the positive here is additional damage for every 8 meters of movement made, and this stacks up. So this gives us 16% more damage when we're moving. But the negative of this candle is that it converts 99% of lightning damage to fire damage. Well, to us, this is actually a positive. On a 2 mod candle here, as opposed to having 2 positives and 2 negatives, we have 4 positive mods. And so we're getting additional damage whenever we move, a flat physical damage to our man-hand weapon, and then we're converting 99% of our lightning to fire, and then 99% of our fire damage to erosion damage. And this is going to be the main way that we're going to be converting stuff this way. And this is important because in the passive tree, if you're just kind of going through on your own, you might notice in Goddess of Deception that we are not taking mixture at all. And the reason for this is because mixture converts your elemental damage, 99% of it, to erosion damage right away. And so if I took mixture, this would make it so that only 50% of my lightning damage converted into fire, while the other 50 went right into erosion damage. And it kind of like messes up the conversion for you in that way. So you're going to take either Plague or Windwalk here. It doesn't give you any benefit. It's going to feel kind of weird, but trust me, it's definitely the best option here. Now, rolling back to candles real quick, the most important modifier besides the conversion on the candles is definitely this adds physical damage to main hand weapon. This is definitely what I recommend you get on both of your candles. Other positive modifiers are this like additional damage when you move, the Soul Eater candle modifier, where when you kill enemies, you get more movement speed and attack damage and area. That one's pretty nice. Also, things like sealed mana is kind of important here because especially if your Imperial Might doesn't roll really well, you're going to want to have more sealed mana. You either want it here or on slates, and so it's kind of better on a candle, I think. Also, cooldown recovery speed is basically damage for the build, and so this is just another good spot to pick up that stat. Now, going through the rest of the gear, you're pretty much going to be using either Eternity for mapping and just kind of killing normal stuff, but if you're going to do single target damage, I recommend the Vortex Heart. This is pretty cheap early on level legendary, and I picked one that's corroded for more critical strike damage. And the reason you take this is because it gives us focus strike. This makes it so that area skills deal additional damage to enemies that are in the center, and it's really hard to beat this. You want this either like on your weapon eventually or on your necklace here, and we're going to be using an axe for the explode. And so we don't really have the opportunity to get it on a mace. And so Vortex Heart is very powerful. Now for the rest of the gear here, we already talked about Kaleidoscope. The belt here is the Paradox of the Second Will. This makes it so that you're going to start off at 50 chaos right away. Chaos and order, basically, if you have this effect at all, you're going to start off at 100 order, and every second you get 1 chaos and you lose 1 order. It's kind of like a teeter-totter. Well, this starts you halfway through the thing, and it makes it so that it's just a little bit easier to kind of get the full power from any chaos mods. And we'll be using a lot of chaos mods in our slates. And then for the body armor, we're using Imperial Might. This gives us increased defenses from the 3 rare pieces we have. And it gives us, at max roll here, 50% defense from helmet, gloves, and boots for every piece of non-legendary gear you have equipped. We have 4 non-legendaries. So we're getting like 200% increased defense from these 3 slots. We're also getting sealed mana and aura effect for every non-legendary as well, which is pretty nice. And then the last thing here, Emperor's Wrath, makes us immune to curses, gives us attack and spell block, and halves our skill cost, which is very good. Now for the rare gear here, or the non-legendary, the important stuff here is I recommend using Energy Shield helmet and glove or an armor boot. And the reason for that is because we're going to want at least 2 pieces of Energy Shield and 1 piece of armor so that we can get quite a bit of Energy Shield. We get about 10k from just 2 pieces and our aura, and then we're getting about 20,000 armor just from our boots, which is pretty nice. But on the helmet here, my priority is definitely sealed mana and aura effect. Cooldown is very nice here, and I got incredibly lucky with a +2 support skill level. But this is probably not something that you're going to need to look for. And obviously energy shield here is important, and every single piece of your crafted gear is going to need erosion resistance if you're going to want to cap. Now for the gloves, it's super priority that you get both physical damage converted to lightning at 50% or higher, and then you want to have the have fervor modifier, which gives you the ability to get fervor, which gives us more crit chance. It's just a very good thing to have. And then having more energy shield is very nice. Having attack critical strike rating, both good. And then getting more erosion resistance and energy shield, all very good. On boots, the reason we go with armor boots is because they can have this physical damage added as fire damage, which kind of gives us a little bit more damage to the profile. We're getting armor here, and so this is going to give us a total of 4,600 armor. This actually ends up being close to 20,000 armor once it's multiplied by the Imperial Might. And then we're picking up Aura Effect here. Aura Effect Tier 0, very important as well. You want as much Aura Effect as possible so you can get as much juice out of all of the auras you're using. Movement speed's pretty nice, and erosion resistance. Lastly, on the weapon, we're going to be using an axe because it needs to have explode on it. This defeated enemies has a 30% chance to explode, dealing secondary physical damage. Is very insane for leveling, especially early on. Just getting an axe that has just this modifier and like a little bit of gear physical is way better than having a better weapon that doesn't have explode. Now the best 3 prefixes are the ones that you see here. As you can tell, they're all gear physical. This is very good to have. This is the thing that is multiplied by 550%, which is pretty important to have for the build. I also have critical strike damage and then mark effect from dreaming. These are both good suffixes. However, if you don't have good suffixes at all, it's not going to affect you as much as not having the prefixes. They are definitely super important along with the explode. Lastly, for gear, let's talk about slates real quick. Our primary pedigree is going to have hair trigger on this. This is going to provide a lot of damage as long as you have fervor on your gloves. And the additional cooldown recovery speed doesn't appear to actually affect our explosions or burst. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing. Other good mods to find on this are basically what you see here. I got insanely lucky with this. Aura effect, sealed mana, and then a chaos effect that gives you damage is a very good thing to have. Now, in this particular setup here, we are going to be using these Last Gods tiers to give us additional max damage for every point of chaos, and then increases the effect of the new god talents next to it. And with this little setup here with kind of these reverse 7s, we have 2 slates here that are affected by 3 others, and then 2 other slates that are affected by 2 others. This kind of gives you the biggest multiplier. And also these 2 are touching this particular slate. And then this slate over here also has a new god modifier. This slate isn't really all that great, but it's getting affected by 2. And then this slate here has the converts physical and also has additional max damage. And I got incredibly lucky and I rolled additional max damage per point of chaos. New god power here at the bottom. So that's also getting boosted by this. The last slate I have over here is just giving me critical strike damage per fervor rating and a little bit of sealed mana. Overall, this thing is not necessarily perfect. And then we have one little god's footsteps up here. This makes it so that speeds up the order decrease from, just the normal 1 to 1 per second. This makes it go faster. And this also has increased effect when there's no god's footsteps in the same row or column. So this is the only one we have. And this effect is actually multiplied by the Last Gods tier that is touching it. Now I'm just going to quickly show the passive tree here. I'm not necessarily going to go through all of the points. However, the main thing to note is with these special passives here is that things like Indifference are going to give you a lot of cooldown recovery speed. And also Off the Beaten Track is massive because this gives us support skill level. But most importantly, this makes it so support skills mana multiplier is set to 105, which allows us to support our auras with a whole lot more stuff and squeeze more into the build. Lastly, Steel Vanguard here is pretty much instrumental with the build, or instrumental for the build in terms of getting resistances. Without this particular tree, you wouldn't be able to cap almost any of your resistances at all. It provides us so much resistance, so much sealed mana. It's just super duper great. And then on top of that, Reflections giving us additional aura effect, which is very good. This is additional, so it's multiplicative with all the aura effect that you have, but it does make us seal more mana, which is kind of a bad thing. Lastly, knowledgeable is something that you really shouldn't overlook. Increasing the effect of our empower skill. We're actually using 2 different empowers, and this provides a staggeringly large amount of damage, and it also gives us some extra defense skill levels, a whole 10 of them. Now talking about skills real quick, my normal setup for Savage Charge just includes critical strike rating increase and hardened. However, if you're going against a really hard boss, you could potentially put a point in and get blinding as well, which helps reduce damage, because like things have to like have a 20% chance just to miss you whenever they're blind. And then the point I would take out is from Force Start Rhythm. This just resets your energy shield all of the time, and it's pretty nice to have, especially because all our support skills are incredibly high level. So this is triggering off every 6 seconds. You still have the option to press the button yourself in order to activate it, but I just like having the rhythm set up. Now for movement skill, we're using blurry steps, which at first I was kind of hesitant to use, but this makes us move so fast everywhere we go. We're not reliant on things like eternity stacks in order to move fast, and you can pretty much just keep this rolling all of the time once you have a lot of cooldown, and it just feels really good. You feel really fast. It's almost too fast at times, but it's definitely good. Next up, we're using Corruption Aura with Terrain of Malice here. This just makes enemies, take more erosion damage, and this is just a very good thing to get. And then we have our first Empower skill here, Bull's Rage. And at level 22 here, this is giving us 46.5% additional damage. But then things like Mania and Self-Sacrifice are really juicing this up to give us lots of status effect. Now, Self-Sacrifice, when I first saw it, really scared me with all of this, like losing health and energy shield and mana all the time. But it's really not all that noticeable. And so I definitely recommend giving this a check out. The other Empower skill, I'm going to kind of skip ahead a little bit, is Fixate. And the way Fixate works is a little bit weird, but basically we're doing Precise Euphoria on hit, which gives us more effect. And on hit, it casts Fixate, which has a cooldown, and it will mark nearby enemies, which makes them take increased critical strike damage. But most importantly, it makes it so we deal double damage for each enemy affected, and this stacks up to 10 times. Now, 6.1 times 10, that's like 61%. Double damage, but you have to remember we're getting 50% increased from our passives on our Empower effect. So it ends up being like 90% double damage. And then Euphoria on hit here, I believe, gives us more status effect. So almost every single source of double damage besides this is kind of bad, because this is almost capping us on double damage when we're just going through a normal map and hitting lots of enemies. Now against bosses, this isn't bad either, because legendary monsters count as 5 monsters. So you're getting half of the stack. So a little bit of double damage will help you against single targets, but Fixate is absolutely bonkers. Now going through the other auras we have here, this is still on mana. We have Precise Steadfast. I could probably get this up to level 21. I'm putting Precise Magical Source at only level 10. I don't really need it any higher than that, I believe. And I kind of want to keep my mana a little bit lower. We have Summon Flame Spirit. I could get this to 21 as well. And then the other stuff on mana is we have Precise Elemental Resistance. This gives us a lot of our elemental resistance. If you're like kind of struggling on elemental resistance, it probably means that your aura effect is a little too low. You just need to put more energy into improving aura effect, or get a higher level Precise Elemental Resistance. And actually, this is giving us 3 max res, because we're, I guess, once it gets to 2.5 max res, it rounds up. And that is incredibly nice. Things like Selfishness too benefit from getting all of the levels to our support skills, giving us more aura effect. Restrain also benefits from that because it makes these less expensive. And then things like Precise Weapon Amp, Precise Electric Conversion, and Precise Erosion Enhancement, all of these just boost our damage even further. Lastly, the stuff that we put on life with Precise Seal Conversion, and the reason this is so good is because normal Seal Conversion here has a mana multiplier of like nothing. However, it replaces it gives a 152.5 additional sealed mana cost, which Precise Sealed does not have. Instead, it has this multiplier here, but thanks to our passives, that's actually only 105%. And so this is just incredibly beneficial for being able to reserve a ton of stuff. And so we're able to actually put a selfishness connected to a cuteness imbue with fearless, charged flames, and energy fortress on here. Whereas if I was just doing a level 20 seal conversion, I could only put fearless. So getting the precise version of seal conversion basically gives us 3 additional auras here, which is a very big deal. There are only maybe a few map mods that I would kind of recommend you avoid, and they're the ones that put a protective dome around rare enemies because it kind of makes it hard to explode them, and then the one that makes it so that non-rare enemies take less damage if there's a rare nearby, because this appears to me to be bugged and it just provides an insane amount of damage reduction. Like, normal white mobs are tankier than almost the boss of the map if there's a rare monster anywhere nearby them in any way, shape, or form, and this is absolutely crazy. Also, if you're trying to check your actual single target DPS on the dummy here, what you need to do is you need to hit it for at least 15 seconds while your berserk is all the way capped out, and the reason for that is because of our hero memories stacking up damage over time. So this like 1.5 additional melee for every second the berserk status lasts. It needs to last for 15 seconds in order to get the 22% multiplicative damage here. And that's pretty much it for the build. I'm going to leave the links in the description, like I said before. If you have any questions, please feel free to come by the stream. I'll probably consider playing this build again during preseason, just to see if I can maybe do the conversion a little bit earlier on and see if I could like make anything better. But it was an absolute blast to play. Hopefully you guys have a great time, and we'll see you next time.